Hi, my name is Karthik Anantakrishnan. I'm a product manager in Azure Networking. Going into the agenda for this session, I want to start off with the Azure Edge Zones overview and provide you a view of the different offerings that Microsoft has announced in terms of the Edge offerings. I'll take you into the details of Azure Private Edge Zones, which enables enterprises and telco operators to build private wireless networks. I'll also talk about the Edge Zone partner ecosystem that we have built to enable you to take advantage of the private Edge Zone platform. I'll finish the session with a set of cool demos with the different partners that we have done the technical integration with. The key goals for this session that I want you to take away is really to understand how we are enabling the telco operators to take advantage of the different edge offerings that Microsoft has come up with. I also want to share the details on the work that we are doing with private edge zones that enables you to build private wireless networks and also to understand how we are bringing in the ecosystem of developers to build edge applications and how you can build MSP offerings to build a private wireless networks based on private edge zones. Looking into the Azure operator ecosystem and the work that we have been doing in hyperscale Azure, what we wanted to take away is when we are thinking about all the capabilities that we are bringing towards the edge, we want to build carrier grade network functions, which we are able to consume in an as a service type of model. You will get to see a view of that with respect to the private edge zone work that we have been doing. We also want to make sure that the performance and the scalability and everything is consistent in terms of the capabilities that we have built in Azure and what we are taking into the edge with our edge offerings, the developer tools and the CI/CD pipelines and the different DevOps tools. We want to keep it consistent between Azure and what we are building in the edge. And with our recent acquisition of Metaswitch and Affirm Networks, we want to simplify the network operations for the telco operators, and we want to bring in newer capabilities to market quickly with the capabilities that Metaswitch and Affirm Networks offers. Also, looking into the other aspects in Azure on how we have built the global footprint, the security and the trust, we will want to bring the same capabilities towards our edge offerings as we look at the operator ecosystem. So here I want to set some context in terms of what we have announced at this point in terms of all the different edge offerings. So around the end of March, we announced a set of capabilities. The keen focus from a Microsoft standpoint is in terms of technologies like 5G. So if you look at this picture, we have a global footprint of Azure regions, which is a part of the Microsoft backbone. And now we have Azure Edge Zones, which are smaller footprint extensions of Azure's in metro locations. We have then announced Azure Edge Zones with carriers, which is a multi-tenant Azure, which is 1.5 away from the 5G core of a telco's infrastructure. With both Edge Zones and Edge Zones with carriers, we want to bring in edge computing applications, which are mission critical applications, closer to the end user device so that you can take advantage of technologies like 5G. With private edge zones, which is based on Azure Stack Edge, we want to get to the capabilities like private wireless networks, and I'll talk in detail about the capabilities that we are enabling with private edge zones. Looking into Azure Edge Zones, as I mentioned earlier, Azure Edge Zones are smaller footprint extensions of Azure, which is still a part of Microsoft's global backbone, which we are bringing up in metro regions. So these are fully managed from Azure, and you can deploy, just like how you deploy a virtual machine or a container workload in Azure, you should be now able to use the Azure portal and go and deploy your workloads. In that sense, the developer experience is consistent. What we have done with Azure Edge Zones is move compute closer to the user. So if you think about media processing or data processing type of applications, which requires a low latency and a highly available network, by moving compute closer to the user, we are enabling these capabilities. In Azure Edge Zones with carriers, we are keenly focused on technologies like 5G, where we want to move the compute 1 hop away from the 5G core of a telco's infrastructure. So if you think about scenarios like immersive video applications, or if you think about scenarios like infrastructure-less bank or an infrastructure-less retail store, in order to enable these capabilities on a public 5G network, what we are doing with Azure Edge Zones with carriers is embedding the compute one hop away from the 5G infrastructure. So this enables the telcos and the developers ecosystem to be able to build and test the edge computing applications in the big Azure. And then you can identify an Azure Edge Zones with carrier as a location target and deploy it on an Edge Zones with carrier. So this is the work that we have been doing with the AT&T, which will eventually expand to all the other telco operators. Going into the details of Azure Private Edge Zones, we believe that the enterprise use of technologies like 5G is going to be in the deployment of private wireless networks. So to enable this for an enterprise to deploy a private wireless network and to enable the telco operators to use a cloud native platform for deploying private wireless networks, we have created a new offering in preview, which is Azure Private Edge Zones. Azure Private Edge Zones is based on Azure Stack Edge. You can now use Private Edge Zones to deploy both a virtual network function as well as an edge computing application side by side on the Private Edge Zone platform. So Private Edge Zones offer capabilities for you to deploy your native VM based applications, or if you have a modernized application that is based on containers, you can deploy both varieties of applications from the cloud and manage it from the cloud. Similarly, to simplify the network operations for the telcos and bring newer products to the market quickly, we have enabled a simplified click and deploy, a SaaS-like experience for deploying virtual network functions from the cloud and manage it in the edge. I'll show you a couple of demos of the integration that we have done with the different partners that enables this capability on private edge zones. So essentially, the key takeaway with private edge zones is if you think about scenarios like smart factory or smart manufacturing, where enterprises want to run a private wireless network, you can now use private edge zone as a platform to run both the network functions like the virtual packet core, or you can run the network functions like an SD-WAN CPE on the private edge zone platform. And you can also run the edge computing applications which are container based or VM based that take advantage of the GPU on the device, and you can run them side by side and enable scenarios with private wireless connectivity. We understand that building a private wireless network is very complex, and it is not easy for enterprises to manage a private wireless network. So in order to enable a telco operator to be able to deploy a private wireless network and manage it for an enterprise customer, we have built an ecosystem of different partners, both on the technology side as well as on the in terms of offering a managed services. So looking at it all the way from the devices to the SIMs, we have partnered with the different SIM vendors and device vendors. The device vendors are specifically in terms of looking into Sierra Wireless and Multitech, who are bringing in their transition gateways with respect to a CBRS, with respect to an unlicensed spectrum. In terms of the SIM cards and both the eSIM and the SIM technologies, we are partnering with Gemalto, Edemia, and G&D. We have also partnered with CommScope and Nokia in terms of the access point vendors. And looking into the ecosystem of virtual network functions for the evolved packet cores, we have at this point worked with the different industry leaders in this space, like Affirmed, Metaswitch, Nokia, and Mavenir. And we have gotten it to a place where these virtual network functions can run on the Azure Stack Edge platform. So the experience that we have created is you should be able to simply go into the Azure portal and pick an Affirmed or a Metaswitch evolved packet core as a SKU, and you should be able to click and deploy it in a SaaS-like experience onto the Azure Stack Edge and completely manage it from the cloud. In addition to the evolved packet core vendors, we are also working with an ecosystem of SD-WAN CPE vendors like VeloCloud, Versa, and Nuage Networks to bring the SD-WAN Edge as a network function that is available on private edge zones. We are also looking into bringing in firewall vendors like Palo Alto and virtual routers from Arista onto this platform. So the idea being that if you look at the whole technology vendors that we have built in terms of the partner ecosystem, you as a telco operator should be able to use private edge zone as a platform and build an end-to-end private wireless network connectivity plus an edge computing application as a completely vertically integrated solution and take it to the market with your customers. As I mentioned previously, the private edge zones is based on an Azure Stack Edge platform, and I want to talk a little bit about the details of the capabilities of the Azure Stack Edge platform. So at Ignite, we are announcing a new SKU of Azure Stack Edge, which is the Azure Stack Edge Pro that enables private edge zones. With Azure Stack Edge Pro, it is equipped with GPU capabilities, so you can have one or two GPUs, which is a Tesla T4. And what we have also done from a networking standpoint is we have used SRIOV capabilities on ports 5 and 6. So if you think about specialized network functions like the evolved packet core that take advantage of network acceleration, we now have the capability to enable it on private edge zones with the new Azure Stack Edge Pro SKU. With the GPU capabilities on the device, you can now take advantage of the GPU on the device to light up scenarios like video inferencing at the edge. So if you think about use cases like where there is a raw video feed from a retail store that needs to be processed by an edge computing application, you can now do video processing and video inferencing at the edge using your own custom vision or computer vision models. The other aspect of Azure Stack Edge that I want to highlight here, which my colleague Nikhil will talk through in detail in his session, is that Azure Stack Edge, which enables private edge zone, is now capable of deploying containerized workloads using an IoT edge runtime. So you can use an IoT edge and an IoT hub architecture in terms of deploying and managing edge computing applications, container-based edge computing applications onto the Azure Stack Edge. So think about several branch offices in a retail type of a scenario, where if you want your edge compute application to run as a managed application on all the different branch offices, and you want to manage them and update them, you can actually do it from the cloud with the IoT Edge, IoT Hub type of a deployment model. Azure Stack Edge also has support for a native Kubernetes containers. So you can use Azure Arc for Kubernetes and a native Kubernetes support on the Azure Stack Edge to build Kubernetes-based container applications at scale and manage deployments across several branches. Azure Stack Edge Pro also supports the capabilities for virtual machines. So this is to enable you as a telco operators are bringing in MEC applications that are legacy applications, and these are virtual machine based. You can now build these cloud native VM based applications and run them on Azure Stack Edge. Bringing it together essentially with private edge zones, what we are trying to get to the telco operator ecosystem is a platform on which you can run network functions. You can also take advantage of the IoT edge runtime, and you can run a GPU-based applications. So essentially, it's a platform for you to run network functions and edge computing applications that are running side by side, and you can completely manage it from the cloud. So what we are also trying to do is bring an ecosystem of ISVs who will bring their marketplace managed applications that you can integrate and put together a fully integrated MSP offering with which you can bring newer capabilities to the market. So now I would like to switch to a couple of demos to showcase the work that we have been doing with virtual network function vendors and solutions in both in the private LTE space and in the SD-WAN space. So for my demo scenarios, I'm going to highlight the work that we are doing with Nokia Digital Automation Cloud and also with Velo Cloud for their SD-WAN CPE solution. We have been working with Nokia Digital Automation Cloud. As you are probably already familiar, NDAC offers a private wireless solution, and NDAC has targeted different industry sectors in terms of deploying private wireless solutions as a part of their offering. So this includes facilities like a wind turbine farm where there is no access to a public LTE spectrum, where a private wireless network is very attractive in terms of managing the operations of the wind turbine farm. There are also scenarios like employee safety and transportation, where NDAC has targeted these scenarios for private wireless network deployments. So Nokia Digital Automation Cloud is a full solution all the way from device management to the different queues in terms of the access point, both indoor and outdoor access points. The work that we have done with Nokia Digital Automation Cloud and private edge zones is to be able to package the Nokia Digital Automation Cloud NDAC Edge and run it as a SKU in our private edge zone marketplace, so that if you go into the Azure portal, you should be able to click and deploy an NDAC edge once you have done the physical installation of the different access points and the connectivity is established on the Azure Stack Edge. You should simply be able to go into the Azure portal and have a click and deploy experience for the NDAC Edge. And after that, your private wireless network is completely cloud managed. So going into my demo setup, I'm going to play this video where I have a setup in the Nokia offices where we have a Nokia picocell and we have an Azure Stack Edge. And once you have set up a physical connectivity between the Azure Stack Edge and the access point within an enterprise premises, at that point, it is pretty much a click and deploy experience for you to light up a private wireless network. So as I walk through this demo, you will see that I am now going into the Azure portal. Once my initial physical network connectivity is completed and the access points are connected to the Azure Stack Edge, I can simply go into the Azure portal and I can pick my subscription where I want to deploy an NDAC solution. Now, the one thing that I want to highlight here is if you are a telco operator and you are managing the complete private wireless network setup on behalf of the customer, by putting together an MSP offering, you can operate on behalf of a customer subscription in terms of deploying the virtual network function for the customer on the Azure Stack Edge and fully manage it for the customer. You can also integrate with the Azure Resource Manager APIs with your BSS and OSS systems in terms of your marketplace and your digital platforms to provide a fully integrated solution for the customers. So in this demo, I am choosing my subscription. I am also choosing my Azure Stack Edge device. I am at this point providing a name for my VNF that I want to identify in my topology. I picked Nokia as a SKU, and I pick the appropriate SKU from the different offerings that Nokia has created as a vendor. I can also specify the custom IP configuration that is relevant for my enterprise deployment. And once I click on review and create, at this point, we validate your configuration that you have submitted. And once the configuration is validated and you click on the create button, our orchestration and the work that we have done with the NDAC kind of takes the goal state that you specified, and we are able to go and deploy an NDAC edge on the Azure Stack Edge. The work that we have also done is basically to expose an API surface for NDAC as a vendor to be able to integrate with our service to give you a zero-touch automation. Once the NDAC edge is deployed, you can then go into the NDAC portal and you can activate a SIM profile on the network. At this point, the NDAC edge that is running on the Azure Stack Edge now can activate an operational SIM profiles. Then you can go into your end user device, and the end user device at this point is able to access the private wireless network. So we have made it completely easy for an enterprise to take advantage of a private wireless network. So as I walked you through the Nokia demo of the Nokia Digital Automation Cloud enabling a private wireless network, I also want to highlight that we are working with telco operators and SIs in terms of an MSP offering that you can put together that offers either a private wireless network connectivity as a solution, or you can package a private wireless network connectivity as well as an edge computing application for a vertical, say for example, smart retail or smart manufacturing, and your MSP offering can be made available on the Azure Marketplace so that the customers can discover those MSP offerings in terms of a complete solution that you as a telco operator is bringing to the market. Here is an example of an MSP offering that Nokia Digital Automation Cloud has put together on the Azure portal. Now moving on to the other integration work that we have been doing with the different partners on private edge zones with respect to the virtual network function ecosystem. The other one that I want to highlight is the work that we have been doing with SD-WAN vendors like VeloCloud, Versa, Nuage Networks, and other partners. So here I want to highlight the work that we have been doing with VeloCloud. So if you're already familiar with the VMware SD-WAN by VeloCloud, today we have all of these SD-WAN CPE vendors available as a virtual network function in the Azure Marketplace. So you can go into the Azure Marketplace and you can click and deploy a VeloCloud SD-WAN Edge as a network function in the Azure Virtual Network. So now what we are enabling with private edge zones is the ability for enterprises and telco operators to be able to go into the Azure portal and deploy a VeloCloud SD-WAN edge as a managed network function on the private edge zones. So you have the same click and deploy experience in terms of going into the portal and be able to specify your custom network configuration, and you can deploy a VeloCloud SD-WAN edge VNF onto the private edge zones basically. So as we look into edge zones and edge zones with carriers, the work that we want to do with VeloCloud is to be able to enable the VeloCloud VMware SD-WAN gateway to run in edge zones or in edge zones with carriers as a part of the SD-WAN overlay fabric. So this is a scenario of VeloCloud taking advantage of the compute infrastructure that is available closer in the metros and in the telcos data centers to be able to run the SD-WAN gateway. So to show you how we have simplified the experience in terms of how you can take advantage of a VeloCloud SD-WAN edge on private edge zones, I want to show you a demo of the work that we have done with VeloCloud. So for my demo setup, I have a VeloCloud SD-WAN edge running in Redmond campus on private edge zones. I have another VeloCloud SD-WAN edge VNF running within the VMware premises. I also have a VeloCloud SD-WAN edge running within an Azure virtual network. So to show you an end-to-end setup of a cloud-managed VNF deployment and the initial provisioning, and after that, how you can go and manage it from the VeloCloud orchestrator and also from the Azure portal, let's switch to the Azure portal for my demo. Here I have the Azure Stack Edge device in the VMware premises. The Azure Stack Edge device is a completely cloud managed device, and I'm now on the Azure portal. You can see that the device is online. Now let me switch to the properties tab. You can see that the port 2 of the Azure Stack Edge device is the management port on the device, and it is now connected to Azure. And port 5 is the LAN port, which is connected to the enterprise network. And port 6 is connected to the wide area network within the enterprise premises. Now, once all of these port configurations are made and the device is physically connected, you can completely manage it from the Azure portal to deploy virtual machines and containerized workloads. And you can also deploy virtual network functions onto the Azure Stack Edge. So in order to deploy virtual network functions on the Azure Stack Edge, once the device is registered, you then go and enable a role, which is the Azure Network Function Manager device resource. By enabling this role, you now can deploy virtual network functions on the Azure Stack Edge. Now, the work that we have done with VMware SD-WAN is to be able to package the VMware SD-WAN as a SKU into the private edge zone marketplace, so that what you can do is you can simply go into this blade, which is a create Azure Network Function Manager VNF blade. You can specify your subscription where you want to deploy the VeloCloud VMware SD-WAN VNF. You can specify the resource group and other properties. You can then point it to the Azure Stack Edge device where you want the VMware SD-WAN VNF to learn. And we have packaged the VMware SD-WAN VNF as a SKU into our marketplace. So you select SD-WAN as the SKU type and VeloCloud Edge as the SKU. You can also specify your custom user data configuration and your network IP configuration for the different ports for the VNF VMs. Once you specify these properties, if you click the create button, we have done the work with VMware and the API integration to be able to orchestrate the deployment of VMware SD-WAN onto private edge zones. So here is a VMware SD-WAN within the VeloCloud premises that is now deployed, and it is in the provision state. Now, once the VMware SD-WAN VNF is deployed through the Azure portal, you can simply log in into the VeloCloud orchestrator, and you can do a VeloCloud orchestrator provides you a single pane of management for all your branch office SD-WAN appliances, virtual appliances. Now here you see an Azure private edge zone VNF running in the VMware premises. I have a similar virtual network function running in the Microsoft campus, in the Redmond campus, and I have another VNF running within a Azure virtual network. Now, Yeah, what I'm going to do is basically I've switched to the test and troubleshoot tab, and I'm now initiating a live session, a live remote session to the VMware SD-WAN VNF running within the VMware premises. Now, what I'm going to do is this is running on a private edge zone. I'm going to list an active path, list a path that exists between this SD-WAN VNF and another SD-WAN VNF running within an Azure Stack Edge in the Azure premises in the Redmond campus. Now let me click the run button. Now this shows me the active, if there is an active path between this VNF and the SD-WAN VNF running in the Redmond campus. It'll show that I now have, this is the bandwidth that is available for the SD-WAN tunnel. It also shows the latency of the network. So essentially, this provides you a single pane of management of all your branch offices from the VeloCloud cloud portal. You can also switch to the Azure portal. And if you go into the metrics, you can look into all sorts of metrics for the device resource and for the underlying infrastructure that supports the VMware SD-WAN VNF. Now, this concludes the demo. I hope you enjoyed this session and you got to learn about the different edge offerings that Microsoft is bringing to the market and how we are enabling the ecosystem of telco operators to take advantage of the capabilities that we are bringing in terms of the hyperscale Azure as well as the edge offerings. To learn more about Azure Edge Zones, please check out aka.ms/edgezones and aka.ms/edgezones with partners. If you want to know more about the Azure Stack Edge on which we have built a private edge zone capabilities, please check out aka.ms/Azure Stack Edge. Thank you.